The night wind howled like a starving wolf through the crooked streets of Dustwater, that town out in the far dry reaches of New Mexico territory where men came to gamble away their pay or die before dawn. The saloon lights flickered against cracked boards, and dust rode high on every gust, sifting into eyes, lungs, and whiskey glasses alike. Folks here said the desert took what it wanted, and when it chose you, there was no outrunning it. Sheriff Caleb Harlan had spent near 20 years on these streets, most of them with a gun at his hip and sleep that came in stolen fragments. He'd buried enough men to stop counting, seen widows turn hard as iron, and children vanish into outlaw gangs like cattle slipping through a busted fence. But on the night she arrived, something shifted in the marrow of him. She came stumbling off the westbound stage with nothing but a threadbare carpetbag, dust baked into her hair, and a bruise blooming purple under her left eye. Caleb had been standing outside the marshal's office, boots planted in the dirt, watching the stage pull in. She looked too young to carry such ruin, but her eyes told otherwise, eyes dark, wide, and wild like someone who had already looked death in the teeth and lived to talk about it. The townsfolk noticed, whispering. Dustwater had little patience for strays. A woman alone was marked before she even spoke a word. Caleb saw the way the saloon keeper leaned against his doorframe, grinning too long. He saw how two card sharpers paused mid-hand at the window, watching her legs tremble on the boardwalk. He also saw her try to keep her chin lifted though she was shaking apart. By the time she dropped the bag and nearly collapsed, he was there, steadying her by the arm. "You need a place." His voice came rough, not from cruelty but from years of sand and whiskey. She blinked at him, hesitant, like she wasn't sure if he was another wolf in man's clothing. "Just a room. And work if there's any." He should have walked her down to the boarding house, should have left her to whatever fate had already hitched itself to her shadow. But instead, without thinking, he said, "Come on. You'll stay above the jail. Got an extra room. Not much, but safe." Safe. The word tasted strange on his tongue. In Dustwater, there was no such thing. He gave her a cot, a wash basin, and some leftover bread. By morning, she had swept the office clean, polished the coffee pot, and even mended his torn sleeve. She never asked for pay, just worked like someone who needed her hands busy or else her thoughts would eat her alive. Her name was Anna Lee, though she spoke it like it cost her something each time. Caleb didn't press. Out here, names were like fences, you put them up for protection, but they never truly stopped anything from getting in. He told himself it was pity, nothing more. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days, and her bruise still colored her cheek. He gave her a job to keep her from the saloon wolves, gave her a room because a woman wandering the streets at night was asking for trouble. That was all. But a week later, Caleb found himself waiting at the office window come sundown, watching for her shadow to move behind the lace curtain upstairs. He'd catch himself listening for her footsteps, the soft pat of her boots above him, like it steadied something in his chest he hadn't even realized was loose. The town started to notice. "She your girl now, Sheriff." One ranch hand slurred after too much whiskey. Caleb ignored it, but the whispers kept growing. Dustwater thrived on gossip, and a woman in the sheriff's house was a story too sweet to let die. Then came the night the horse returned without its rider. The animal staggered down Main Street, foam at the bit, saddle blood dark. Caleb was already moving before the townsfolk gathered, his Colt heavy at his side. He knew it belonged to McCrae, one of the local ranchers who'd been having trouble with rustlers. Trouble meant gunsmoke, and gunsmoke meant Anna Lee would be alone. He nearly ran back, but when he pushed through the jailhouse door, there she was, standing stiff as iron, her hands wrapped around the rifle he kept by the cot upstairs. Her face was pale, but her eyes locked on the door as if expecting the devil himself. "They're coming," she whispered. Caleb stopped cold. "Who?" But she only shook her head. That night, nothing came. No rustlers, no riders, just the endless scrape of wind through Dustwater. But Caleb lay awake on his cot downstairs, listening to her breathe above, and he wondered how she'd known anything at all. The days grew stranger. She would pause mid-sweep, staring out the window toward the desert, as if listening to voices only she could hear. Once, she whispered a name in her sleep, Ezekiel. Caleb asked no questions, though it clawed at him. Then one evening, a telegram came for him. 3 men were riding in, outlaws, mean ones, rumored to be after blood. Caleb read the names scrawled in ink, and one made his stomach clench. Ezekiel North. When he looked up at Anna Lee, she was already standing in the doorway, her face drained of all color. "You can't face him," she said, voice trembling. "You know him." She swallowed hard. "He's my husband." The world tilted then, like the floorboards wanted to give way beneath Caleb's boots. He'd given her shelter, protection, even a job, never once imagining he'd invited the devil's bride into his walls. "Why'd you run?" His words came sharp. "Because he'll kill me. And anyone who stands in his way." That night, Caleb didn't wait at the window for her shadow. He sat at his desk, revolver laid out, loading each chamber with hands that didn't shake though his heart thundered. The outlaws came at dawn, 3 silhouettes riding against the bruised horizon. Dustwater shuttered itself tight, every door locked, every curtain drawn. The streets lay bare except for Caleb, standing in the middle, hat low, Colt at his side. Ezekiel was taller than he expected, broad shoulders draped in a black duster, face carved into cruel lines. His smile was wrong, all teeth and no warmth. "Sheriff Harlan," he drawled. "Heard you been keeping my wife." Behind him, Anna Lee stood frozen on the boardwalk, rifle shaking in her hands. Caleb wanted to tell her to get inside, but Ezekiel's eyes never left him. "You give her back," Ezekiel said. "Or I take her in the town with her." The silence stretched, broken only by the creak of saddle leather. Caleb thought of the first night he'd seen her stumble off the stage. Thought of her sweeping floors, mending sleeves, standing guard with his rifle though she shook like a leaf. He thought of how he'd caught himself listening for her steps, waiting for her shadow. Pity hadn't kept her safe. Something deeper had. "You want her," Caleb said, voice low, "you'll have to go through me." The street exploded in gunsmoke. Caleb's first shot tore through one outlaw's chest before the man could even clear leather. The second outlaw fired wild, missing wide, then caught a bullet between the eyes. Ezekiel moved faster than any man had a right to, his shot grazing Caleb's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Pain seared hot, but Caleb held steady, eyes locked on the devil grinning across from him. Then Anna Lee screamed. Ezekiel's head turned just enough. Caleb fired once. The shot echoed down Dustwater's empty streets, sharp as a coffin nail. Ezekiel stumbled, blood blooming dark on his chest, and fell to the dirt. The silence afterward was heavier than death. Anna Lee dropped the rifle, tears carving through the dust on her cheeks. Caleb stood, blood soaking his sleeve, Colt still smoking in his hand. When it was over, the townsfolk emerged, blinking like moles in daylight. They found 3 bodies in the street and a sheriff standing like stone, but their eyes went to her. Always to her. That night, Caleb sat at his desk, bandaged shoulder stiff, staring at the window. Above, Anna Lee moved softly in the room he'd given her. He told himself he'd done it for justice, for duty. But when her shadow crossed the curtain and lingered, his chest eased for the first time in years. In Dustwater, men came and went, and mercy was rarer than rain. He'd given her a room and a job out of pity. But now, every night, he caught himself waiting at the window, because sometimes, against all odds, a stray didn't just survive. Sometimes, she became the reason a man kept breathing.